Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia and crazy headline, the WTF headline that I just read, and now you will read. So Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State of United States, says that Ukraine will become a member of NATO. So this is the first time since the war started that someone from NATO is 100% convinced that Ukraine is going to become part of NATO. And so we read a bit more. So this comes up at the 75th anniversary of NATO alliance, and there is a meeting of the foreign ministers in Brussels. And basically, Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State of the United States, basically is confident that Ukraine will become a member of NATO and express support for the country. So he says that the support for Ukraine and the determination of every country represented in NATO remains rock solid, and they will do everything they can, and the alliance will do what they can to ensure that Ukraine has what it takes to deal with Russia's ongoing aggression. So then this statement is just crazy. Ukraine will become a member of NATO. Ukraine will become a member of NATO. And he claimed that the purpose of the summit is to help to build a bridge to that membership and create a clear pathway for Ukraine moving forward, which I can't really see how clear is this pathway. This pathway is not going to be clear at all, because the one of this restriction on joining NATO is that you must not have territorial dispute with any countries. If not, you can't join NATO. And which is why Georgia is out of the question, because it lost 2 of its territory that they recognize, and they will not give it up. So they can't join NATO. Ukraine have the same problem in 2014 as they lost Crimea, and then Donbass went into the civil war with the rest of Ukraine. So Ukraine actually was not qualified to become part of NATO. And however, now they are changing the rhetoric, because before the conflict, they are trying to see how to bring Ukraine into NATO. When the war broke out, NATO basically immediately declared that they will not, Ukraine will not be part of NATO, or unlikely, there's not the time to talk about it. Zelensky eventually gave up and said that they will not join NATO. They can't be able to, they can forget about their dream. It can't be done. And suddenly now we have moved to a point where suddenly America is saying that Ukraine will become a member of NATO, which begs the question, why not now? Why say they will when you might as well just say they become part of NATO right now, and NATO go to war with Russia? Because if you want to protect Ukraine, then, and you want them to be part of NATO, and you believe that that is their future, then you might as well just start to protect them now. Why would you not? You should go to war now. Then you can ensure that Ukraine will be full, complete, and join NATO as a very powerful country. Whatever they are doing now is just destroying Ukraine, and all this talk about they will become part of NATO just doesn't gel very well in terms of the actions and versus the rhetoric. So, and furthermore, this comes after Russia basically declared that NATO and Russia is now in direct confrontation. The statement actually comes from Peskov, the Dmitry Peskov, the spokesman for the Kremlin. They say that the relationship between NATO and Russia has slipped to the point of direct confrontation. And from Russia's point of view, they believe that NATO is now already involved in the conflict in Ukraine, and is continuing to move towards their border and expand military infrastructure towards their border. And part of this is probably due to the fact that NATO is now deploying forces in Moldova, despite Moldova is not really part of NATO, and there's a huge amount of troops is actually in Romania as well, not to mention expansion of station forces in Baltic states as well as in Poland. Basically, there is a increase in terms of the troops, the NATO troops on Russia border, and for Russia this looks like a massive threat. And so of course, then they of course boasted about Finland and Sweden joining NATO, which is pointless to talk about, because Finland and Sweden will always fight on the side of NATO if NATO and Russia goes to war. If they don't, then they just brought themselves into World War III, if World War III breaks out. So not very wise. So anyway, Trump have all previously, ranted a lot about NATO members not spending enough, because NATO countries need to spend 2% of its GDP on defense, and many of these European countries do not spend that 2% obligation, and Trump is really don't like it, because they felt that people are not taking the alliance seriously. And which is why, he basically said that he will encourage Russia to attack any members that's not spending enough on defense. Which is very interesting, because this triggered a lot of European countries, despite the fact that it is part of their obligation to spend that money. And with the actual threat that United States will not rescue any European countries that not spend the 2%, they feel triggered about it, just shows the hypocrisy and the kind of like irresponsibility on those countries that felt triggered, because it is an alliance. It's not a protectorate. You're not supposed to be a puppet of United States. You are supposed to be a partner. So that's what the NATO supposed to be. So basically, NATO say that they are helping Ukraine to fight against the face of Russian aggression. They give a lot of things, advanced weaponry, training, and intelligence. But this caused Russia to say that NATO is now de facto part of the conflict. And basically, also the article also talked about the F-16, and Putin said that any F-16 donated to Ukraine will be shot down. And basically, on top of that, what in this article did not say is that the F-16s that take off from non-Ukrainian countries to participate in the Ukraine war will make those air bases a military target as well. So this is not mentioned in this article. So then there is this 100 billion 5-year fund. I talked about this in yesterday's video. If you have not watched it, you should watch it. And part of this idea of this 100 billion 5-year fund is to try to make it Trump-proof. They are trying to protect the funding of Ukraine for at least the next 5 years from Trump, because they try to avoid, because Trump threatened to pull funding for Ukraine. They're trying to now solidify and make this deal permanent, so that United States cannot withdraw or renegade on it. And I think Trump is going to find his own way to piss off everybody if he actually come into power and this 100 billion thing is out of his control. I'm quite sure Trump is going to find this 100 billion elsewhere to deduct it away from the Europeans. So no, this is going to cause some geopolitical problems between Europe and United States if Trump is going to be elected, because the actions now, the rhetorics coming in the European side does make it sound like they have very little confidence that Biden is going to win the election. There's this strong feeling that Trump is almost 100% going to win, and they are now trying to plan ahead of the United States presidential election to quickly move faster in case Trump become president and screw up the entire Ukraine war, which is very anti-democratic. Because if Trump runs on a campaign to pull out the funding from Ukraine, then NATO trying to create safeguards against United States pulling out their funding from Ukraine, then that's against the will of the American people, which is free world. No, that is the pure European values and democratic values. No, good job. So anyway, moving on. So they also say that Ukraine now have to ration the number of artillery shells, because they are now going to praise Russia they say that the Russians have overwhelming military power because they are now able to outgun the Ukrainians with more ammunition and more artillery. This is said by Stoltenberg, the Secretary General of NATO. So basically, he is a pro-Russian troll. He praised Russia to the moon. He's saying that Russia is so powerful, he's going to outgun, Ukraine, and yeah, so pro-Russia. Luckily, I'm neutral. So anyway, they're going to go ahead to work on the plan, and they definitely going to settle this financing and see how they're going to settle this before the Trump's election. They say that there will be a summit in July. So the US election is going to be in November. So everything has to be settled before then. If not, Trump can veto it. So we shall see how this goes. And basically, Stoltenberg say that America and European together in NATO will make them stronger and safer together. Although I did think that having America inside is like living with a wolf, so but it's okay. So anyway, 20 members is set to hit the target of 2% for defense coming this year, which is kind of hilarious because they should have hit the target of 2% of GDP every year. So this is Trump have his rights to criticize NATO countries because this is not right. So anyway, so they also talk about the Trump proofing and everything. So yeah, the fund of 100 billion looks very optimistic, but it's knowing how difficult it is to agree on a smaller amount at EU level. So we shall see how they're going to settle this 100 billion. I'm not sure. They are still going to iron it out. But the most important thing is the statement that Ukraine will become part of NATO. This is really scary. And this is going to set the world towards a path of World War III if this is the mentality of NATO. Because if you really want to do it, just do it now. Don't wait for Russia to build more ammunition and tanks and artillery. It's like, yeah. So, what's the difference? It's like if Ukraine is going to become part of NATO, might as well just declare them as part of NATO right now. If the concept of the NATO alliance is so effective at deterring aggression, then immediately declaring Ukraine as part of NATO should immediately end the war. Russia would immediately put its tail between its legs and run away. But if declaring Ukraine as part of NATO and NATO involvement in Ukraine war doesn't stop Russia's war of aggression, then what makes them think that having Ukraine as part of NATO will stop Russian aggression in the future? What? Why would they be? Why would they even stop Russia at all? If you can't stop it now, you can't stop it in the future. It's the same, right? So it's just like, if you don't put them in now, you put them in the future. Like, that is also hypocritic. Hypocrisy. So anyway, thank you for watching. Do press the like button, subscribe. Yeah, I didn't plan this video. I just saw this headline, was like, oh, I need to talk about this. World War III is coming. Dudes, I'll see you guys in the next update.